Welcome to Dwell Middle School Central Teaching. I'm really excited to look at this one short little verse. It's simple, it's easy to understand, and it's been scientifically proven to change lives. This is Philippians 4:8, and it's about thinking about thinking. Here's what we mean. You could be thinking about all sorts of things. Maybe your math test. Maybe the guy or girl who sits behind you that makes it hard for you to concentrate on your math test. Maybe you're just thinking about COD. Maybe you're thinking about your last selfie and how many likes it is or isn't getting. Or maybe you're just thinking about food. One thing you can think about that's different from all those is you could think about thinking. So instead of just worrying about your test, you could think, I am worrying about my test. Do you see how those are different? You got to be able to think about something and then also think about the fact that I'm thinking about that thing. I don't know if that's getting too trippy for you, but you really got to be able to understand that we can notice what we're thinking and we can change what we're thinking when we realize it. This is what Philippians 4:8 says. It says, fix your thoughts, fix them, try to get them stuck on these things, on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Those are the things we should try to get our mind on. So you realize what you're thinking, and if you are in a bad mood, this is the key to changing a bad mood. You can't just change your mood or change your feelings. It doesn't work that way. It didn't work for the Joker, doesn't work for us. But what you can do is change what you're thinking about, and you can try to fix your thoughts. I want to think about this other thing, but I'm going to try to think about this thing that's true and good. And if you do that, then that can change your mood, and that can even cure major mental and emotional problems, as we will see. What type of things should we think about? He mentions first things that are true, and later he also says things that are right. You'll sometimes have thoughts in your head that are false. Things like, I know that person hates me. That's false. You don't know they hate you. You don't know what they're thinking. You can't read their mind. The true thought is this: I don't like the way that person talked to me, but I really don't know what's up with them. Maybe they hate me. Maybe they're just in a bad mood. Maybe they had a terrible day. See the difference? True thoughts and false thoughts. It says we should think about things that are true. Or another example of a false thought. Today is going to go terribly. I just know it. False. You don't know what's going to happen today because you can't tell the future. You're not a fortune teller. Here's the true thought. I feel worried, but I actually don't know how today is going to go. See the difference between true thoughts and false thoughts? We need to fix our thoughts. Try to think about the things that are true. He also mentions thoughts that are honorable and pure. So the opposite of this would be thoughts that bring us down, thoughts that hurt us. There's some thoughts that when we have them in our minds, they're good for us. Other thoughts, when we keep them in our mind, they're really, really bad for us. You could think of these as poisonous thoughts for your mind. For example, nothing I do matters, or I'm ugly, or I'm fat, or nobody cares about me, or there's nothing good about that person over there. Everything about them is terrible. Or here comes another terrible day. Or another one, nobody understands me. Now, I bet you that's watching this, I bet you are smart enough to go through each one of those thoughts and say what's wrong with each one of them. So I'm not going to take the time to do that. I just want to make the point that holding on to these thoughts leads to making bad decisions. If you have these thoughts in your mind, it's going to take you down a path that you're not going to want to go. For example, if you have the thought in your mind, I'm fat. Okay, everybody thinks that sometimes. But if you hold on to that thought, and if you think about that a lot, then you might starve yourself. And some people do. And there are people who are very, very skinny, who have this thought in their minds, and there's nothing wrong with their body, and they starve to death because this poisonous thought is in their mind. That's tragic. We got to be able to think about what we're thinking about, and sometimes it really can be a matter of life and death. Or for a little smaller, less dramatic example, if you have the thought, nothing I do matters, that's a poisonous thought. You know why? If you're thinking that, are you going to try to do anything good? Of course not. Why would you? So having that poisonous thought could prevent you from doing any good in your life that you would do. And if you're looking at that list and you're thinking like, oh man, I'm a terrible Christian because I think all those, don't. I picked these because I think everybody thinks all these. And I picked these because these 6 thoughts I myself have personally thought, and I have wrestled with all of these. So don't beat yourself up about it. Just realize I need to fix my thoughts on something else. And if I fix my thoughts on these, it's going to take me down a bad road. He also mentions thinking of things that are lovely and admirable and excellent and worthy of praise. So just thinking about good things. We talked earlier about true and false. There's some false thoughts, there's some true thoughts. And in the true thoughts, there are some terrible true things, okay? There are also some excellent true things. And this never says we should ignore bad things that are true. All it says is we need to fix our thoughts on the good ones. You see the difference? That doesn't mean ignore the bad ones. So to sum up here, this is what we should do. We should face these, the terrible true things, because they're real. We should ignore these, the false things, because they're not real. And we should fix our minds on these, the things that are both excellent and true. And you might be thinking, like what? What type of things? Well, I want you to talk about that in discussion groups. I could probably list off a whole bunch of things that are both excellent and true that would be good for you to think about. But if you come up with a list yourself, you'll remember it better. And that's what we're after. I want you to remember and try to put this into practice. Philippians 4:8. This is such an important verse all the time, and it is extremely important right now because we live in a time of depression and anxiety. Depression and anxiety are when bad moods and negative thinking just completely take over our life. Depression can feel like hopelessness and numbness or just extreme sadness all the time. And anxiety is when it's fear. It's fear that is now controlling our lives and ruining our lives. And these things are no joke. They are serious. And right now, these are 3 times higher than they were this same time last year. I just read a study from the Center for Disease Control that surveyed thousands of people, and they saw that 3 times more people have this emotional and mental distress than this time last year. That's a lot. So if you're feeling like, man, my mood is not what it usually is, hey, you're not alone. And thankfully, there's something that helps. There's Philippians 4:8. There's also another thing that helps, and that is this thing called, are you ready? Brace yourself, big words coming, cognitive behavioral therapy. Don't worry about what cognitive and behavioral means. Just remember, there's this thing called CBT. What I want you to remember about it is this has been proven to cure depression and anxiety and even lesser bad moods better than anything else. It's been studied thousands of times, and it works really, really well. And the reason why I'm bringing it up here in a study of Philippians 4:8 is because CBT, this type of therapy, is Philippians 4:8. This is when you go to therapy or go to a counselor, and they teach you to fix your thoughts on what is true and what is good. Here's how it works, and you can actually do it with yourself if it's a minor bad mood. If you're sad or if you're angry, here's what you need to do. First, you need to notice, what am I thinking? So this means when you're in a bad mood, don't just go to the video game. Don't just go to social media or whatever else lets you not think about it. First, you have to notice, what am I thinking? It might just take a minute. So take time to do that part. And then you have to assess what you're thinking. You know what it means to assess, right? You all take assessments at school. You need to grade what you're thinking. You need to test what you're thinking. That's asking this question: is there a problem with this thought? And then if there is, you need to propose a new way of thinking. Just think of it like this. You don't need to force yourself to think of it differently, even if you just propose a thought, like maybe like this thought. It can be really, really helpful. And if you go to a counselor and they do CBT, they do this cognitive behavioral therapy, what they're going to do is teach you these examples of problem thinking. So then you can notice them and be like, aha, that's a problem. I should try to not think that way, and I should think this other way. Here's some examples, and they'll sound very familiar after studying this Bible verse. Mind reading is one of them. If you're thinking, he hates me, you have that thought, you're like, wait a second, I don't know that he hates me. I'm reading his mind. I'm trying to, and I'm failing because none of us can actually do it, right? If you find yourself thinking about what someone else thinks or feels, and you're obsessing over that, that's a problem way of thinking. That's mind reading. Another one is fortune telling. I will fail. Okay, you don't know you'll fail. The reality is you might fail, you might succeed. And if you're fortune telling, that's a problem way of thinking, and you got to notice it. Aha, here's this problem. Also, there's labeling. Like if you have the thought, she's such a jerk, or I'm unlovable. What labeling does is it slaps a label on somebody, either somebody else or yourself, and it says that person is 100% all bad. And that's never true, because all of us are a mix of good and bad. So you got to notice, am I labeling? Another one is alwaysing. And this one's maybe my favorite. I do this all the time, I have to admit. Not all the time. I do this often. Oh, I caught myself there. I always say something stupid. You ever have that thought in your head? Now, when would you have that thought in your head? It would be right after you say something stupid, right? So instead of thinking, I always say something stupid, the reality is, I just said something stupid. Can you see how that's way less painful? This one time I said something stupid, and maybe I can think of 3 or 4 other times. That doesn't mean I always say something stupid. That's problem thinking. Or you always put me down. You would have that thought in your head after someone puts you down. So instead of thinking you always put me down, you'd say, I don't like how you just put me down. And if you think of it that way, it's not poisonous to your thinking, and you're not saying this other person is so terrible. And then there's nevering, which works pretty much the exact same way as alwaysing. Like, here's this one situation, now that's true for every single time this happens. Those are just a few examples of problem thinking. So you notice what you're thinking, and then you remember some of these problems, like, am I fortune telling? Am I mind reading? Am I alwaysing? And if there are those problems, then you propose a new way to think. Like, think of it like this. I'm upset about this one thing I did. It's not that I always do it. And if we do those, then you will see slow improvement. This isn't like overnight, now your life is completely different and you never have a bad mood again. And you might have noticed I laid this out in a memorable, maybe dorky kind of way, but I want you to remember it. When you're in a bad mood, take naps. Notice what you're thinking. Assess what you're thinking, and is there one of these problems? And then propose a different way to think. And if you do, you could see slow progress. So this is what cognitive behavioral therapy, the best way to do counseling, the most proven way, this is what it teaches. And it teaches the same thing as Philippians 4:8, which tells us to fix your thoughts on things that are true and things that are good. Let's draw some conclusions here on thinking about thinking. Fix your thoughts. We've seen this works for everyone. This CBT, this type of therapy, is proven to help with anxiety and depression and bad moods in general. This is really good, and what it does is it teaches people to fix our thoughts on what is true and what is good. And if that's true, if this works for everyone, then fix your thoughts should work even better for Christians. because we have something. We have something true and right and lovely and praiseworthy to fix our thoughts on that other people don't know. And that is the good news. The good news is that Christ died for our sins, that the God of the universe loved us so much that he would rather suffer than see us suffer. He became a human, died on a cross, raised from the dead so we can be forgiven. And that message is the most true, most honorable, most lovely thing we could think of. And if we think about that just for a minute every day, you will see that it changes your life. And so next time you're in a bad mood, just take naps. Notice what you're thinking. Assess it. Does it have one of these problems? Propose a different thought. And if you do those things, you'll see slow progress. And one last very important note, that if it's really bad, if you're in a really, really bad mood, or you feel extremely sad, or you find yourself thinking things that you find very scary that are in your head, please make sure you talk to a parent or a cell group leader about it, because when it gets really bad, you really need help from someone else to deal with those kind of thoughts. So thanks so much for tuning in. Here's some discussion questions for a group, and we will see you next time.